In Chapter 7, we're going to be discussing international markets, and the chapter is entitled Competing in International Markets, and that's part of our participation in the business strategy game, is that we will be selling our products throughout the world, and how much you want to get into the other markets is up to you, but you will need to compete in international markets. I think everybody's aware of the benefits of being in international markets. You have access to a huge customer base if you're competing in some of the more populous countries of the world. And I think everybody's heard about there are some lower production costs and costs of materials in other parts of the world, and this is something that our political process is always worried about, is do you build in America, or do you offshore? And there's pros and cons to all of that, and that's something, how much you want to compete in the international markets is going to be up to you and your co-managers. And then another benefit is you can diversify your risk. If your product doesn't sell well in one market, you might be able to sell very well in another market, and your risk won't be in just one place. If you have poor sales, another market may be able to make up for that. If you remember your marketing classes, you've probably heard of Porter's determinants of national advantage, which is the diamond model, and gives the four key dimensions of why some firms located in specific countries are more successful than others in some industries. And that has to do with strategy, structure, and rivalry. And some markets are highly competitive for certain products. The other thing is the factor conditions. The country helps you determine your global competitiveness, and some manufacturers in some areas who say have been producing in low cost production countries have been greatly helped by the availability of cheap labor. And I think we all know Nike has product developed in China, Taiwan. They started out in Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, etc. And then demand conditions. For example, Japanese companies, when they first started out, I remember growing up, nobody really wanted to buy products made in Japan because they were considered cheap. But then the Japanese customer had very, very high standards, and so the Japanese companies responded to that. And now, when you look at electronics and car manufacturing, some of the highest quality companies are Japanese companies. And then when you look at related and supported industries, you can see that, let's say, for example, if you're going to, let's say, build shoes in a specific company, maybe you'll get complementary manufacturers who will provide materials, fabric or rubber or something along that line. So keep that in mind. That's already built into the some of the inputs of the business strategy game. In conclusion, as I previously mentioned, in this game, you won't have the option of determining whether to compete internationally. You will compete internationally, but you still will need to examine the demand, the factor conditions, costs of production, and develop your strategy and structure, looking at rivalry among your competitors in all those markets. So should be an interesting time, especially looking at the international markets.